Remember, more snails with banded shells are surviving than snails with yellow shells. We have been trying to figure out why the snails with banded shells are more likely to survive than the snails with yellow shells in their environment. Remember that we explained to the engineering firm that the grove snails with yellow shells were less likely to survive because they weren't able to avoid being eaten by the song thrushes in their environment. The engineering firm sent more data about the grove snails and the population we have been studying, including new data about their predator, the song thrush. Remember, song thrushes pick up the snails and then bang them on a rock to crack open their shells and eat the snail inside. These cards have new data from the engineering firm, including the new data about the song thrush. We will use this data to make inferences about why the snails with banded shells are more likely to survive than the snails with yellow shells. If grove snails are going to survive, they need to avoid being picked up and crushed by the song thrush. See if you can figure out why it is easier or harder for grove snails with different traits to avoid being picked up by song thrushes. Once you have come back and press play, we've made the inference that snails with banded shells have a trait for shell color that makes it easier for them to avoid being seen and picked up by the song thrushes in the grassy environment. The trait for yellow shell color makes it harder for the snails with yellow shells to avoid being picked up. Look at the other 3 data cards and record your inferences. When you are ready, come back here and press play. We've made the inference that snails with banded shells have a trait for high shell strength that makes it easier for them to avoid being crushed by the song thrushes when they are banged against a rock. The snails with yellow shells have a trait for low shell strength, so it's harder for them to avoid being crushed by the song thrushes. We learned that organisms with adaptive traits are more likely to survive in their environment, and organisms with non-adaptive traits are less likely to survive in their environment. Thinking about which grove snail traits were adaptive or non-adaptive can help us figure out why the snails with banded shells are more likely to survive. Which grove snail traits are adaptive traits? Why? Press play after you answer. You should have said, the trait for banded shell color is adaptive because it helps the snails blend into the grassy environment and avoid being seen by the song thrushes. The trait for high shell strength is adaptive because it helps the snail avoid being crushed by song thrushes. Which grove snail traits are non-adaptive traits? Why? Press play once you have answered. You should have said, the trait for yellow shell color is non-adaptive because it stands out in the grassy environment and makes it harder to avoid being seen by the song thrushes. The trait for low shell strength is non-adaptive because it makes it harder for the snail to avoid being crushed by song thrushes. We are now ready to explain to the engineering firm why the snails with the banded shells are more likely to survive.